what have I got there? Internet.
He's did it again.
Yes, you managed to have the same picture playing for about 3.5 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, me. I apologize, guys. That's what happens when you do this at work. You don't sit down and dedicate yourself to the channel. Yeah. I'm going to find a way of making this my full-time job so that I can just completely, production value will go skyrocketing. I'm not sure. Yeah. But yes, we have Derek Alexander on tonight, and hopefully after a minute of staring at his photograph, you now know what he'll look like when he does appear. How have you been, Kat? It's been a couple of weeks since I've been in.
Yeah, I know. Good. So I had a bit of a disaster last week because obviously you weren't here and my internet decided that was the week that it just wasn't going to work at all. So poor John was solo on screen for a little while, but he had good banter, good blether, so he held the fort for me for a couple of minutes. But yeah, I'm really excited for this chat, and yeah, we've actually got the head of archaeology for National Trust Scotland on, so it's very, very cool.
That's a cool title. That's now my new aim in life is to be a head of something, but if it could be head of archaeology.
I mean, like, yeah, you own your own business. You could be like head of Folkhouse.
Yeah. Head of archaeology in my own back garden, I think I could be.
You have to start digging it up a little bit then if you're going to be doing that.
I think we'd be good at that. I've got 2 dogs. They're probably better diggers than me. Anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, no, all good.
All good. We've got Ian Abernethy's on with a glass of Murray McDavid Festival bottle, I assume Speyside Festival bottle, 2025. Nearly finished. Annoyingly, the cork broke pouring it today. Well, you're just going to have to finish it now. What an excuse. He says it's nearly finished, but there's only like that much out of it. So he's, but the cork's broke, so he's going to have to tank it. Drink responsibly, guys. And Robert Primo, howdy from Houston, Texas. Good evening to you. He's sneaking a live peek at the Blether while working from home. Good.
He's put that in inverted commas as well. I don't know if he is working. Is he working? Working from home.
Dave, there's no need for comments like that. Dave is watching on Facebook saying that he's certainly not a head of hair, Mike. But that's just mean, really.
That is, but quite good as well, actually.
Pretty quick for Dave, yeah.
Yeah, it's good to see everyone on. I hope everyone's as excited as we are. Are you on the aqua tonight, just on the water?
Oh, no, I have.
You do.
Kind of a wee homage for tonight, talking about old distilling. The Lindores Abbey, obviously famous for being our oldest written record of Scotch whisky. And I learned from, we had the Inverurie Distillery guys who are kind of at the other end of the spectrum, looking to be one of our newest distilleries, in the Foghouse last week, doing a wee tasting in an intro. And Gareth, who's kind of head of their operations, was telling us how they found a still on the site when they were doing a dig at Lindores, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, kind of tying in that whole story, because I think written record, they were talking, there was only discussions on the barley being made and maybe malted for distilling, so they didn't know if distilling happened elsewhere, but surely finding a still on site changes that whole perspective completely.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very, very cool.
Are you having anything tonight, Kat?
I'm on taxi duty tonight. I've got to go and pick up my teenage son from work, so I'm on peppermint tea, but it's nice.
Rocking
All
it.
good. Glamorous lifestyle that I lead.
Good evening to Callum. He's joining us as well. He is saying good evening, Blether, and we've got Dave Fackerstead, who's on Pep. He's Pepsi Max Tropical. Never heard of Pepsi Max Tropical. Don't know what that means.
He'll have a gin with it later on. Need it.
Maybe.
So there'll be some sort of concoction happening there.
Pop a pineapple in it and call it tropical.
Yes, there you go. A wee umbrella.
Awesome. Callum is asking for tasting notes on the peppermint tea.
There's definitely a menthol note to it that I'm picking up.
Yeah. And what is your favourite peppermint tea from Campbelltown, Kat?
It's the Glen Scotia blend, obviously. The Victoriana.
Excellent. Guys, we would love to sit and chat together and catch up. But we have a guest on, and this is going to be great fun. As I said in the kind of blurb, combining whiskey geekery and history geekery together, I think it's going to be great fun. So let's chat away with Derek Alexander, Head of Archaeology. Hello, Derek. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Mike and Kat. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Excited.
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit follically challenged. I don't know about heads of hair and you're worse off than me.
Yeah,
Oh.
Mine's just flipped back.
You just got it brushed back.
Yeah, and I think I'm on Aberlour, 12-year-old.
And the Aberlour 12, lovely wee drop. Aberlour,
Yeah.
I think when they had the 10-year-old out with our most local, obviously Glengarry and Glendronach, that was our biggest seller in the shop, the Aberlour 10. So, and yeah, now that the 12's coming, it's a wee bit of a higher price point. It's kind of slowed down a little bit, but I think it's big in supermarkets. I think they kind of have the mass control of that market. But lovely drop. I do like it.
Yeah.
The flange.
Cheers, Slange.
Oh, yeah. Slange with my
I
peppermint
get the
tea.
feeling I might be going through this quite quickly. I might have to run off halfway through.
Well, be careful because you might fall down one of those holes behind you there.
Easy done.
Well, that's a great segue into asking, like, who are you and what do you do? And like this amazing discovery that the guys have probably read about and seen. It was about a month ago or something. It was kind of came out.
It was a month ago.
March, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were digging in. No, it was May. We were digging at Ben Law's in May. I'm sure. I think.
I have the article up here. So, oh no, March was when you won the research project of the year.
That's right. That was last year.
That was March last year.
Yeah.
So many articles.
Well, my name's Derek Alexander. I'm Head of Archaeology for the National Trust for Scotland, which I always say sounds very grand, but in fact, there's only 3 of us in the archaeology team, so it's not, there's not a lot of team members, but we use lots and lots of volunteers and lots of locals and things.
I was going to say that is a hell of a lot of digging for 3 people.
Yeah. So I mean, archaeology, for those who are listening, things if they don't know, archaeology is the study of the past from what people have left behind. So that's objects, it's buildings, it's anything. It's from Mesolithic hunter-gatherers to Second World War plane crash sites. So I look after the trust's properties and tell their stories on an archaeological basis. And really, we've been doing that for whiskey in the last 5 years. So one of our subjects of interest has been whiskey. I mean, the trust looks after lots of castles, lots of gardens, lots of islands, lots of vernacular buildings and battlefields, but we also have huge areas of upland landscape. And within that, there are hundreds of sites of illicit whiskey production. So it's been a fantastic project. Pioneering Spirit is what we've called the project. And we've been getting funded by the Glenlivet distillery. So it's been a brilliant partnership for us and for them. So one of the parts of the project is we spent some time excavating their original distillery site. So
the Glenlivet site.
And what's really interesting about that is It was a site that I actually did a survey of back in 1994. So whatever that, when was that? That's a long time ago now. So I was a young,
22 years ago?
fresh-faced archaeologist. And I knew nothing about whiskey making. And I went off and did this survey of the remains of this ruined area. I mean, the good thing about it is, and if you know Glenlivet, it's up the hill behind. So it was demolished. It ran from 1824 when it got its license through to 1859, and it was demolished and moved down the hill. So effectively, it was left flat, and the buildings disappeared over time. It was great.
Because it was originally Minmore, wasn't it? Was it Minmore Distillery or Minmore Farm? The distillery was on.
It was in Minmore, yes. Yeah. Well, Minmore's the current one. This one is at Upper Drummond.
Right.
So the original one's Upper Drummond, and moved down to Minmore, down the hill. So that's from 1859 onwards is down the hill.
On the Minmore Farm.
Yeah. So it's been a fantastic project, and we've been very lucky to work in partnership with the guys, both at Glenlivet and some of their ex-employees as well. So we're Alan Winchester worked with us heavily over the years, and Alan, if you know Alan, he's
he's like everyone's favorite granddad.
He's fantastic, and he's climbed the Munros twice.
Yeah.
So he knows every part of Scotland, and he's interested in the hills, and he knows about the illicit whiskey production. And there was nothing better than us doing digging and having Alan over the shoulder to ask him questions about whiskey. So, the trouble with archaeology is you can't be an expert in everything. So you rely on other people with knowledge to come and tell you about it. So it's been brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Alan's passion for not just whiskey, but the illicit side, so certainly up in the Cabrach area.
Yeah.
Is kind of well documented. I think he's an absolute trove of information, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a legend.
We need to write a book. We need to get him writing a book.
Yeah.
He loves nothing more than just to traipse up through the bogs and up a hill looking for sites. And so how do you come across these sites? Is it using maps and thinking there might be something here, let's go find out, or are you kind of people reporting it, or maybe finding something by accident? Or how does that?
It's probably all of those things. I mean, we know where the licensed distilleries are, so we know where this one was because it was marked on the map, and even I knew it was there because I said Old Distillery on the map. So that was a giveaway. So it was quite easy to find this one. But obviously, this is a farm. The ones that we're looking for illicit whiskey bothies, they're tiny little things, and nobody marked them on maps, or very rarely did they mark them on maps, mainly because you didn't want them found. So, did you ever build a den as a kid? In the back garden where you get you get a lean-to, maybe an old log, and you put some wood up against it, and you put some bracken over the top or some heather, and you build a wee roof on it, and you hide in it. That's what illicit distilling was like. Basically, you were building a wee den up a burn line somewhere because you needed the water. It needed to be hidden, so it needs to be out of the way. So you don't want the excisemen to find it. So you hide it, and you make a good job of hiding it. So you don't make sure that none of the walls are showing. And often that's what you do is you put bits of turf and things in, and then you cover it with a roof and bracken and things like that. And of course, if it's a nice day, you can do it outside. You can do some of the distilling outside, but you want to hide it away. It takes probably a week to make whiskey, from the distilling side of it. So you're there for a while, and you don't want to be caught. So you want to hide the fire. You don't want to see light at night. You want to hide the smoke. And you want to hide the building itself. So you cover up any walls, and you try not to leave a big path that leads right to it, because that's the easiest thing for the excise officers to do, was to walk up the lines of the burns and look for things. Because what you need is water. You need a hidden area, and you need water, because you need water to soak the mash, the barley, and you need it then to boil up, and then in the whole distillation process, and obviously for cooling down the copper worm. So it needs that as well, although they weren't always beside water. So there are one or two examples where that's not the case.
What's the sort of volume are we talking about? Like it was a bit of a copper still that you found at Ben Lawes, but how big were these stills?
I mean, you're looking, I think, at something that's in the order of sort of anywhere between sort of 5 and 40 gallon stills. So something that's something that's sort of this size. And what do you get? It's about about a tenth of production, is it, that you get? So if you put in your wash and you boil it all off, basically you're going to get the runoff's going to be, is it a tenth of it or fifth, something like that. So
I think you're looking at about 400 litres of alcohol off a ton of barley.
Yeah. So I don't know what that means.
It's different when you narrow that down into kind of what these guys were using.
Yeah. So basically, if you boiled up a still this size, you get about a jug about this size. That shows you sort of thing. But you can do that multiple times, obviously, but it takes time to do it. So depending on when it was and where it was and access to resources and the size of your still, you could produce small quantities for yourself, or you can produce larger quantities that you can then sell. And of course, that's why people are doing it, because in the past, people were making it for themselves, for their own consumption, and it's a great thing to have because you can convert basically excess agricultural produce, barley, into something that's condensed, can be stored, so it lasts, which is a good thing. And the fact that it lasts means it can be transported and you can swap it for other things. So originally people are paying, you're paying for your rent to your landlord. You're paying, if you're in the Highlands, part of your payment of your ground is you've got to go and fight for him when he says he wants you to fight for him. You might give him cattle and sheep and things like that. And of course, by the time you get to the 18th century, they're looking for money. They're looking for cash. And so you have to convert all those things into cash. You're no allowed to go fighting anymore. So they've clamped down on that. So you take things to market and you get money for it. And of course, as soon as you can make money in anything, everybody wants a slice of the action. And so they stamp tax on it, and that drives it underground. And from the mid 18th century through into the early 19th century, that's the heyday of illicit whiskey making in Scotland. And it's about making cash. It's organised crime, but some people got very good at it.
No, it's so cool. I mean, there you go.
I was Ian's just comment outside Glenlivet looks like its stills would have been between the size of Ulibes stills and the 8-door stills. I was going to bring up the picture of and wrap this back around to what Ian was talking about earlier. He asked, I presume whiskey archaeology volunteering involves plenty of dramming, so your senses are tuned into sniffing out the whiskey remains. And it ties in with a great picture. I think it's the Pioneered Spirits website has it with you and Alan with a bottle of Glenlivet.
Oh, yes.
Taking a wee break from the dig while there's 4 guys behind you arched over digging away.
It's really that you get to have a wee snifter on site. Obviously, it's only on special occasions, and of course, it was the Glenlivet's 200th anniversary, so we were allowed to have an anniversary drink on site in 2024. And also when I presented at London in the current archaeology awards, I took a wee bottle of Glenlivet and poured that out in front of everybody while I was, and they were all saying they could get the smell of it in the front row of the audience, which was brilliant. So yes, it's great. And of course, working it with any whiskey organisation and companies, you get a chance to sample their wares, and it's been brilliant. Yeah, it's been fantastic being talked through it. Not just from Glenlivet's point of view, but from the whole the whiskey industry's point of view. It's been good. We've met some fantastic people over the years.
I've got to tell this joke because it ties in with yourself and Alan clinking those glasses. This is from Reb. An archaeologist and a blender were analysing a recently found 200-year-old octave. Incredible, the archaeologist said. The blender took a careful sip inside. It needs another couple of years yet.
Yes, exactly.
Love it. Love
Very
it.
good.
David Stirk is on. Good evening to you. Good evening, PX Woodhouse. Good evening, Rev. Thank you for your joke there. Dave Stirk. I don't know if you've come across him in your work. He's authoring very much a historian of probably all Scotch, but focused in Campbelltown.
Oh, yeah.
And
I was at Campbelltown a couple of years ago. It was brilliant.
Excellent.
Yeah,
He's in
so,
watching.
A lot of good buildings archaeology in Campbelltown. Lots of you go around hunting down the old distilleries where they all used to be located. You just see walls of them and think it's fantastic. Yeah,
it's mad. When I did the tour at Glen Scotia, the guide, you start outside on the street, and the guide's like literally, so that was a distillery, that was a distillery, there, that was a distillery. You're like, oh my gosh, there's just so many of them.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, very, very cool place. Just so far away, and worth going to though. Beautiful part of the world. Yeah. Talking about beautiful parts of the world, Ben Lawes, what an awesome location for this still to be. So are we talking like Ben Lawes kind of national park? Are we talking up Ben Lawes, the hill itself? Because it's like 7 Monroe.
Yeah, we're in the we're basically looking in the halfway up the mountainside at Ben Lawes. So it's if you go up the Lawes Burn from Lawes itself, from the old village at Lawes, and go up straight up that burn. If you're heading towards Lochan and Cat, it's one of the routes up to the summit of Ben Lawes as well. It takes you up from basically you're going from the infield of the 18th century pre-enclosure farms through the outfield, beyond the head dike, up onto the steep ground, basically into the rough grazing beyond the head dike. And there, halfway up the trail, you pass hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of stances where they stored peat. So a lot of peat was cut on the hill and it was taken down. Halfway down, it was stored for drying and things like that. So the great thing about that is obviously it's halfway up to where the shealing grounds are. So that's where they take the cattle in the summer months. So between May to September, you take the cattle up to the summer pastures. The reason you do that is to get them away from all the crops. All your barley crops and things like that are growing and ripening down in the infield and the outfield. So you need to get your animals away and make use of that grazing. Of course, by going up there, it's getting you away from the sight of everybody else as well. But also means that you're going up and down the hill, you're moving peats around, you're moving other things around, people are moving around. It's less obvious why you're going up to this isolated location in the hill. So you get halfway up the hill, and if you know the area at all, it's just before you get to Lochan and Cat. There's a big corrie up there. I've forgotten the name of the corrie itself, but it's a beautiful bit of landscape. If you're up there on your own, you can just feel like you've been isolated from the rest of the world. It is absolutely brilliant. So you could be up there a whole day and see nobody. But in the past, probably there was no fair number of folk up there. So it's a beautiful location to be in, and we know that there's a number of illicit whiskey bothies up there because back in the late 90s, early noughties, there was an archaeological survey done of the National Trust for Scotland's ground at Ben Lawes, and they identified 5 different possible bothy sites. And by whiskey bothy sites, they generally meet those criteria that we've already talked about. They're small buildings against the side of a burn, hidden away, and they're isolated, so they're not within the shealing groups. So they seem to be on their own, and you can't say any more than that from surface remains alone. What you have to do then is go and do some archaeological investigation work. So professional excavation. So we've been out doing that. So the trust has got, when we started, we had about 30 known sites across our ground. Now we've got, I think, 45 or something identified. So there will be more out there, and there will be hundreds across the country. So we've got them at Mar Lodge, Ben Lomond, Ben Lawes, Torridon, Glencoe, Kintail. Most of our big upland landscapes have got them in them. And it's not surprising, and they survive. And there probably was similar things in the lowlands of Scotland for periods of time, but they were probably just in folks' barns and byres and their outbuildings behind their farm. And of course, they just get lost. So, yeah.
And are you kind of talking about the same period? Are you seeing, like, across the country, similarities in how this may be set up or the shape of these bothies and
largely the function is the same across the periods. I mean, the periods that we're looking at is really 200 years. But what we have seen is that what does vary across the country, in most of the construction methods are the same. By digging, we've now dug 10 of them. So that what's good is you don't find all the evidence at one, but by digging 10, we've found little bits of evidence on different constructions and on different ones and different artifacts at different ones. So we're now starting to build up really quite a nice pattern of evidence. Of course, the other thing that changes across the country is the historical records. So there are some places that are well known to be hotbeds of illicit whiskey making. And there are other places that, you know, there's very little written down about. They're probably the successful places, because the people who are writing about them are the ones who get caught. So largely it's the ones that are reported by the excise and the ones that go to court and get prosecuted. So, excuse me, up in Torridon, in the Northwest Highlands, which is a big part of the Trust ground, there's a late flourishing of illicit whiskey making, and it's about the time of the Crofting Act, and it's a bit of a, you know, thumb in your nose at the authorities, and it's between the excise office up in Ullapool and the one down in Loch Carron, so it's sort of no man's land in the middle, and there, because it's quite late, there are lots of really, really good documentary sources that relate to the whiskey making there. And so much so that it makes it, because of the romantic side of it, by the time you get to the 19th century, certainly the mid to late 19th century, it's featuring in many of the national newspapers. So it's making it into the Times, it's making it into the Scotsman, it's making it into the Manchester Evening News. I think that's really weird. But there's some great sources of information. And there's a local historian, Murdo MacDonald. If anybody's interested and gets up to Torridon, he did a fantastic little booklet called The Battle of the Black Pot. And it pulls together some of those sources and describes some of them. And some of them go into fantastic detail. In fact, if you let me, I'll read you a bit. Will I read you a bit? Because there's a great bit.
Yes,
this is a site at Laggy Dhu, which is where the inner and outer Loch Torridon meet. And it was a foggy morning. What they used to do is they used to come in on a cutter. The excisemen would come in on a cutter and they would raid all the local farms looking for illicit whiskey making and stills. And they'd arrive early in the morning when everybody was asleep. If the people saw them coming, you know, there's all those tales, romantic tales about people putting up washing in a certain way and putting out signals and things like that. None of that happened at Torridon. What they did was they had a big trumpet and they just blew this big trumpet, and that announced that the excisemen were on their way. So no subtlety involved in Torridon, which was fantastic. But there was 3 guys got off the boat and they went to Laggy Dhu, this little township of about 4 buildings, and everybody was asleep. And they got up the hill and they got separated in the mist, as you do in a sort of Scooby-Doo sort of fashion. And one of them goes off on his own and he stumbles across an illicit whiskey bothy in full production. And this is in the 1880s, and this is the bit from the paper that talks about it. And so he goes off to try and find his friends, and comes back with them to raid it, so they can grab the still. And it says here, not more than 30 minutes had elapsed from the time the officer had left the place, but in the interval, the smugglers, which is basically the guys that make whiskey, the smugglers had decamped, taking with them the still's head and the worm. The place, however, contained the whole of the brewing utensils and materials in course of manufacture, a washback of 112 gallons containing a quantity of wash, another washback of 60 gallons, low wines receiver of 60 gallons, a quantity of low wines, 2 worm tubs, a brewing tub, a wash charger, a tin of yeast, 5-gallon flask, and a tin can. They were on all 150 gallons of wash and 15 gallons of low wine, so there's a 1-to-10 ratio. They were also in place in an old-fashioned lamp, 2 creels, kitchen pot, a teapot, a number of bottles of spade, 4 empty sacks, a horn drinking cup, several articles of clothing and provisions, oatmeal, oatcakes, potatoes, herring, and salt. Basically, and it says then, the whole of the material was destroyed, the plant consigned to the flames and on the spot, and the distillery demolished. But they got away with the smugglers got away with the still. But that's, from an archaeological point of view, that's a fantastic description. That's the sort of material culture, the artifacts that we want to find when we go and dig one of these sites. And I have to say, we've never found a site that's been as rich as that yet. So we've never found a complete still, but what we did find at Ben Lawers was part of the still.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I love the salted herring, or the herring salts. Whoever created the Duolingo for Gaelic must have been reading that, because every 3 lessons you're learning how to say salted herring.
That's right. It is. Yeah. And it says at the end of that, it says the meal of potatoes and herrings, which the smugglers had prepared, was left untouched and was still quite hot when the officers arrived. That's very Marie Celeste. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, so, it showed you how quickly I had to act, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, that brings me. Sorry.
You wouldn't be. And I was going to say, you wouldn't be going very fast if you were literally trying to leg it with your still. I know. I guess they must have ponies or something.
Yeah, I mean,
like Highland ponies or something to help
obviously them. You pour it out and you take the liquid out, although it might still be quite hot, so you'd have to go carefully. You'd be all the way up the hill, pair of oven gloves on. But yeah, I mean, that's and what the excise officers once did was they went away and they came back and spied on the area that they knew there was a site to see where the guys were hiding things, because what you do is you have your bothy where you make the whiskey, but you don't keep your still there. You don't keep the head there. You don't keep the worm there. That gets broken up and distributed around the landscape so that when you need it, you bring it together. And that means that you can only be caught once, So if you're caught, you lose everything. Whereas you have to be in production when they get caught. So they separate it out, and so often you'll find little hidey holes in the vicinity of some of these bothy sites, so little caves, little lochans where things have been dropped into, all the usual sort of traditions and stories. And that's the Ben Lawers site. That was what was so great about it, because we had excavated quite a few of the sites and we'd never found a piece of copper. We thought, that's what we're looking at. I mean, I'd really like to find some whiskey, but we're looking for some copper. And it was on the first day of the excavation, and it was basically, it's like, think a little D-shaped building, maybe about 4 meters long by about 2 meters wide, little doorway on one side, built up against a steep bank of a river, and the river running maybe within about a meter of the front door of it. And we just started taking the turf off, the top off the stone wall, and the first thing I saw was this little piece of green metal, and it was quite clearly copper. And I just went, brilliant, this is fantastic. And I thought it was going to be part of the worm or part of the... But in fact, what I think it is they had a little bracket that they joined the head of the still to the worm with. And there's, I don't know if you've seen the little illustration in the Gaelic dictionary of a pot still, and it's got all the little bits named in Gaelic. And there's a middle bit of it which joins, and it's actually called the joining bit. and I think it's called, and my Gaelic pronunciation is rubbish, so Angirden or something like that. And it basically means the bit in the middle, the joining bit. And what I think has happened there is they've gone like that, taken to bits. Somebody's gone off with the worm, somebody's gone off with the head and the still, and somebody's put the joining bit on the top of the wall, and it's been flattened. And I can imagine the next time they're trying to put it all together, and somebody said, "Have you got the joining bit? Have you got the joining bit?" "No, I've not got the joining." "Oh no, we left it." Because the other thing is they maybe didn't just have one bothy, they probably had multiple bothies, and you move it around. If you know that the excise guys are in one glen, you go to another glen, so you can avoid it. So, I mean, as a find, yeah, it was fantastic, because that's not something that comes up very often. I mean, to be fair, not many of these sites have been excavated. We're the first folk looking at it from an archaeological point of view. I mean, lots of people have looked at them from a history point of view, because there's lots of good historical stuff. Sorry, I keep going on. I'm getting excited.
It's incredible. I could actually just sit and listen. I feel like I'm just in a lecture. Which is, I mean, in a good way, just sitting, listening, absorbing it. I think people at home are kind of just sitting and listening as well. Sometimes when we have a whiskey chat, we're talking all the tasting notes and all that, and the guys at home are just kind of, I think we're just going to sit and listen. David Stirk has asked, you didn't miss this, David. We didn't talk about it. Is there a kind of body of work available for the archaeological work being done? So there's a website or a book or a library or something, some reference it.
So basically, we've written 2 articles for Current Archaeology. One on the excavation of the Glenlivet legal still, and then the other one on the excavations of the illicit whiskey stills that we've looked at Trust Ground. So that's available. That's online. Actually, you can probably type that in now, and the articles will come up on your browser. But we're working on a book, effectively. An archaeological archaeologists are quite boring, so we'll produce a book that's got all the drawings and all the artifacts and all that. It's really quite, and then we'll maybe try and produce something that actually makes sense and a bit more interesting. So we've got to the end of this year to try and get that written up, which would be grand. And I think I see people have put up the NTS. That
was myself. I just put that up, which is the Pioneer Spirit. So if you go at the bottom of that page, there's lots of links to your different kind of stories. And
so it's been a fantastic project, I say. And so we've got there are, as I say, we get different sites have produced different things, and a lot of them, they're like big distilleries but smaller. That's a daft thing to say, isn't it? But that's what it is. It's the process is 10 times smaller, if not 50 times smaller. When they're making their first batches of whiskey at Glenlivet in 1824, they're making 50 gallons a week. By 1830s, they're making 100, and by 1859 or 1850s, they're making 200 gallons a week. When they move down the hill to the new place, it's 600 gallons. So it's an enormous increase. And once you can start to do that in quantities and quality, and quality is a big part of it, and standard quality, then that's the end of illicit whiskey making, largely, in terms of a money-making enterprise. People still do it for fun and to avoid paying tax and to avoid buying somebody else's whiskey when you can make your own. But that sort of sees the end of it. But the small bothy sites, as I say, you see the same range of artifacts coming out in terms of the whiskey making process. Probably our best example of remains with archaeological remains came from Ben Lomond. Halfway, if you know the sort of the main footpath up the hill, Ben Lomond, just down below that in Corrie Corach, over to the left if you're heading up that main footpath to the summit. Just where the trees start to peter out, in there's another gully with a burn running through it, and it looked like nothing. It never looked like much. Alistair Eckersall, who was the ranger there, pointed it out to me, and we went and had a nosy at it. And there was 3 stones in the line sticking above a little fallen slope, basically, and that was all that was showing on the surface. When we excavated away, we ended up with a wall that was 7 courses high, and we thought it was the outside wall face, but in fact it was the inside wall face, and the rest of it had been destroyed by the burn coming down and washing half of it away. But what we did find was we found where the fireplace was. We found 4 barrel staves, so side of them just like the ones behind me at the moment. So 4 staves of barrel. 2 of them with the top, with a little cruise for the top for the light going into the barrel. I think it was probably for the worm tub rather than anything else. I think, and a lead patch. You know, like sometimes you get a leaking barrel, they would rivet these lead patches to the outside to pull the staves together on old barrels, and we found that at Ben Lomond, and we found exactly the same, a lead patch from a barrel here at Glenlivet as well. So yeah, it was great little discovery. So you know, we've got wood, we've got metal, we've got the copper, we've got iron, we had fires there at Ben Lomond. We had the grids or the grates for the fire, and bits of coal and things as well. So yeah, the ones at Ben Lomond were this size, little grate for a fire. The ones at Glenlivet were this size and weighed an absolute ton. So again, it gives you an idea of the size, the scale of production that these things. But the fact that they carted these, I mean, they're pretty heavy iron bars. They carted, you know, probably about 20 of them up the hill at Ben Lomond. So it was, you know, a fair undertaking. What we've not found yet is any whiskey. I'd like to find some whiskey. But, yeah.
I know a shop you could buy some, but
well, I'll come up. Yeah.
That's cool. So it basically your job is to kind of get this information from Joe Public, from maybe a farmer or from somebody who's maybe seen something that could be of interest, go up, investigate it, and then you decide if it's worth investing time and effort and money to dig up and what.
I mean, yeah, we look basically. We're examining sites on National Trust for Scotland ground. I mean, the thing here to say is archaeology is quite labour intensive and it's quite expensive. You know, so if you find bits of wood, then generally you have to get them conserved. That gets expensive when you have to start doing that side of things. So it's, you know, it's not to be undertaken lightly. So we don't do it that often, the excavation work, and obviously there's no need to disturb sites if we don't have to. But I mean, we're doing a good program of getting a better understanding of these types of sites, which I think is, you know, just is a good way to do it, which is great. I mean, one of the great things about the Glenlivet site is what you find on these sites is that, I mean, most of the stuff's demolition. But what we found was in all the sort of areas where there was sunken features like vats for the receivers, for the for the underback for cooling the mash before it goes into the wash, before it goes into the big tubs, the washbacks. In those sort of things, that's where you get all the nice objects that have fallen in at the time of the from the time of making. So on this site, we found lots of broken glass, and I mean drinking glasses. So and they're not whiskey glasses; they're just wine glasses, but they're a real mix of them. And the other thing we found lots of was clay tobacco pipes. So there was whiskey making. There's a lot of waiting around, and looking at things, and there's a lot of smoking, a fair amount of drinking going on, and watching. I imagine there'd be a fair amount of chatter as well. And of course, all that stuff falls smashed onto the floors and then gets kicked, and it ends up in the corners, and that's where you find all the good artifacts. And our star find at the Glenlivet was found on the first week of the excavation back in when was that, 2021 or something like that. And it was a little brass plaque, a little slider, and it had on it the words Gottlieb patent. And I thought I was going to spend like months sitting in some dusty library somewhere looking through books trying to work out what this was. The guy who found it, one of our volunteers, just went straight on Google and went Gottlieb Peyton and put it in, and it came up for on sale on eBay, and it was a complete exciseman's padlock for locking the spirit safe, and it was an 1829 patent type, and the slider was the bit that covers the keyhole, so it's broken apart.
Yeah.
So we got a remains of where the excise officer would have been and what he would have been doing in the new distillery at Glenlivet. So from our point of view, it doesn't get much better than that. It was brilliant.
That's cool.
That's very, very cool. I was going to say my internet's a bit slow, so I'm just going to sit quiet and let it catch up. I can hear you all fine. I keep seeing my screen freeze. So, but I'm enjoying the chat anyway, and there's lots of good questions coming through. So I haven't zoned out. My internet's really bad, like usual.
We have, as Kat said, we've got some great questions coming in. Ian saying it's definitely the answer to when would you go to if you had a time machine. And then he's obviously got his brain cogs going, because he's then followed up with maybe if there should be a spin-off to Outlander that revolves around a whiskey enthusiast, goes back and compares modern to ancient illicit whiskey.
I mean, I think there was an element of Outlander that involved whiskey making, wasn't there? I mean, obviously a lot of the guys that went from Scotland to the States, and let's say the mid-18th century, some people were forced to go at the end of the Jacobite uprisings and things, and that they take whiskey making and the knowledge of whiskey making to the States. So there's certainly a big connection there. I think one of the big questions we always get is, what did it taste like? And I've heard Alan Winchester speak about it as well. Of course, bad whiskey is bad whiskey. It makes you blind or ill. But if that's the case, then nobody goes back to the person that makes bad whiskey unless you're really desperate. But what happens is, it's a craft skill like anything else. You get people who get good at it, who know how to do it, who can do it and repeat it. And the good thing about illicit whiskey bothies was they were doing it on a small scale, so they could take their time and they could get perfectionist about it. So the quality of whiskey made in certain areas of the country, illicit whiskey, was very high. So when it was sought after, so that's why the Glenlivet area and the Cabrach was well known for making quality whiskey. But it doesn't mean that all illicit whiskey was good. There's Osgood Mackenzie tells a good tale of when his father, who used to live in Inverview House at Inverview Gardens in the Northwest Highlands, discovered an illicit whiskey bothy in operation. He fell in through the roof, seemingly. But he used to have a bottle of whiskey, illicit whiskey, sitting on his sideboard, and along with it, there'd be a whole series of little areas for herbs and spices and fruits that you would put into it, because it probably tasted pretty bitter and pretty rank. So you had to be careful, so what we think of whiskey may not have been, what whiskey, some whiskeys tasted like it, but not all of them. And of course, then you think, well, how does it come to be the whiskey that we know today? And it's likely that, they were selling it in kegs, in barrels. The posh folk were putting it in their cellars, and they were keeping it in their barrels, whereas everybody else is drinking it as it's coming off the whiskey still and in bottles. So the folk that kept it in their cellars, I would imagine, the Duke of Gordon and all these guys, 4 years down the line, they've still got a keg full of this stuff, and suddenly it's got smoother and it's got a bit of a colour to it, and and then people start to appreciate that aging it in oak is a good thing. So that whole story is linked. That whole how to age things and what the quality of whiskies was. Of course, probably I would imagine the end of illicit whiskey making, it seems to be the case in Torridon, is really the breakup of communities. And one of the biggest impacts on probably the end of whiskey making, illicit whiskey making, is probably the First World War. It's lots of guys go off to the First World War and don't come back. And, there's a whole series of traditions that are lost in that period. I always wondered why is there such a big, heavy tradition of illicit distilling in Ireland that hasn't persisted in Scotland to the same extent? And maybe that's it. I'm not sure. That's a whole research topic in its own right. I think maybe you guys would know.
Yeah. No, I could quite agree with you. We've got the Cabrach up quite local to us, and I know that it's been regarded, I think, as a Dutch historian called it Europe's largest war memorial.
Right,
from the First World War. Because as you said, a lot of the guys went off, didn't return, and then it just became, the people who are left, maybe the women or the young kids, didn't have the know-how or the manpower to keep the land going, keep the farms going, so they just sticks and left. So I can quite see how that would be.
Of course, it's not to say that it wasn't that when women weren't involved, because we know that most of the brewing and distilling was in fact very often done by women. And of course, if you look at those records from the Campbelltown coppersmith, what's his name again? I can't remember. And when he was selling these stills in the 18th century, a lot of the people that were buying them were women, and it was communities. So it was communities in Kintyre and Arran, and they were buying it as group lots, and they would share it around. You get your week of the whiskey still, and we get that's what a wonderful thought as a community production exercise.
I'm just waiting for Kat to catch up, because I know Kat's quite into this kind of thing as well. I was going to see if she has anything to.
No, I think it is catching up. I think I'm just kind of waiting, just make sure I don't talk over the top of anybody. But I was actually going to ask you about the kind of, is there evidence of the fact, like the people that were kind of predominantly distilling the whiskey? Because to me, a lot of the early sort of distillers were women, and if it was sort of agricultural based, was it more like the guys are sort of out looking after the livestock and kind of gathering the sheep down the hills, and a lot of the kind of brewing and stuff is like the women that are still left behind?
Yeah, I think there's a certain element to that, because obviously brewing and making beer, which is very much a medieval thing for improving the quality of your drinking water, basically, was very much a task done in the house. But I suppose whiskey making, from what we see, is quite a community wide activity, because basically there's lots of people doing it for the benefit of the wider community. Obviously, the women in houses may be doing things like the malting, which you could do anyway, because you're thinking you're going to make beer, as long as you're making it for yourself. And then we know from these accounts in Torridon that one of the illicit distillers there had a still halfway up the hill at Ben Alligan, and he paid the local kids at the primary school, or the school, it was not a primary school, just a school, to take his sacks of grain up the hill for him, and they got a nip of whiskey. So that's in the 1880s. So, and of course you would have young boys, or girls who are watching sheep, watching cattle, but also acting as lookouts and decoys. So if you see the excisemen coming over the hill, what you do is you run fast in the opposite direction, looking like you're carrying something heavy, and they go after you and not to the still. And by the time they get back to the still, it's been dismantled. So it probably was quite a collective effort, because everybody had probably invested in it time and energy and resources, and they benefited from it in terms of the outcomes as well. So I can imagine there's quite a lot of different folk involved. Of course, archaeologically it's quite difficult to tell, so we have to rely on the historical sources from that side of things a lot of time. Of course, if you're moving things to market illegally, the guys who are shifting it are taking it down to market along with cattle and other things, they're probably what generally termed the smugglers, and these are, bands of heavily armed guys. So think gangsters taking stuff down to Perth and Elgin and Inverness and Edinburgh and all up to the outskirts of town, and then they're meeting with license spirits dealers and selling there before heading back. So there's definitely an organised and element to the crime side of it, and it got serious at times. There were people were killed, people disappeared, people got attacked and wounded. The guy that set up Glenlivet himself, George Smith, one of the things he got was a pair of, if you go to the Glenlivet distillery, there's a pair of pistols that he has that basically was to protect his first distillery from getting burnt down. Lots of legal distilleries that were set up in the 1820s, about the time of the Excise Act, the Licensing Act, basically were threatened by the locals, because basically he was setting up this legal thing and all his neighbours were still doing it illegally. Even his brother was doing it illegally. So he had to protect his investment, and he probably had a couple of heavies to help him do that. But he was one of the few that survived doing that. And many of the other local ones burnt down. It
wasn't long after that they realised that it was, well, the act was in for that purpose, wasn't it? A lot of people realised, well, you know what, this is actually, he's maybe got something here. He's making money now, and
yeah, exactly.
And then 24 seems to be, you've got a lot of domino.
Yeah. And of course, you don't have to worry about being caught and all that sort of thing. And once, and the other thing is, if you've got quantities, you can't compete with the quantities that he's making, or the quality either, because he's got the time to be able to produce it well. And that's again what leads to the increase in the understanding of Glenlivet as a high quality whiskey.
It's
it's funny, like these places like Torridon used to. My bloody internet. Oh, that's what.
Cancel the show.
There was no delay there.
Hot mic moments.
You were saying Torridon.
Aye, so these places like Benlawers, but like Torridon, they used to live at Benlawers, used to work at Torridon. It's still the same. Like, you're talking about that community, and it would be in the whole community coming together. It's exactly the same to this day, like for like gathering sheep, because it's still kind of common grazing up over Benlawers. All the shepherds say, as long as you've got the mouths with them, it doesn't really matter about fences. So you'd gather in everything that was in front of you, and you would just, take into the fanks, because a lot of them still have hill fanks as well, like sort of midway holding pens, and you'd literally sort out your ones, with either your keel mark or your ear notch, and then phone like the farmer next door and say, we've got half a dozen of yours, do you want to come and get them? And then everybody just kind of heads down to like Killin pub at the end of the day. So it's like, that kind of community kind of aspect still exists to this day as well, which is really cool.
I think you can imagine those sort of things that were happening, gatherings for sheep and things like that in years gone by, that, sitting around a farm table somewhere, bottles of whiskey would have appeared, and that's, at the end of a community gathering like that, I would imagine there would have been a fair amount of, when people got together for any occasion, it would have been, whiskey would have come out, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. And still to this day, I think it's one of those things that brings people together. As Kat said, it's whether you're a farmer in the hill or commiserating yet another Scotland defeat. We always get a dram out.
Go through a lot of bottles that way.
Yeah. But we're a resilient bunch.
We have to be.
And we'll get through it. I'm just looking through some. Can we all please send Kat before next Thursday as many 50p pieces as we can find? That comes from Callum. He's either that or a really big hamster. One of the two. would be good.
Do you know, I
David is in
think,
the daft milk.
No, it's okay. It's the delay. I was going to say, I think it's my laptop. I think it's going to die. I'm going to get a new laptop for the Blether restarting, because I do think it's just an old device. It can't be the internet, surely. It can't, must be plugged into the main pipe for internet. I'm pretty sure that's how internet works. So I'm going to get a new laptop, and we're going to experiment for Blether after the end of the summer.
Derek, I mean, obviously we're a whiskey chat and we're talking whiskey archaeology. What other kind of discoveries have you had that have got like really interested you, like really piqued you?
Hunters. Probably our most recent one, which you might have seen on the news, was about the same time. It was about a month before the Ben Lawers whiskey stills find, was that we found an unexploded shell at Culloden battlefield from the time of the battle, so 280 years old, and it was
I did see that, yeah. God,
we thought it was just a rusty cannonball, but it was too big to be a cannonball. So the shot that they were firing from the cannons at Culloden, about 3 pounders, 4 pounders, about that size. This thing was this sort of size and weighed quite a lot. But we thought, been lying on the ground for 280 years, it would be, that it would been corroded, and it would have, there would be no issue with it. So I took it down the road and gave it to our conservator, who proceeded to knock all the rusty bits off it with a hammer. And it turned out, he phoned me up and said, there's still a wooden stopper in this one. He says we think it was a cohorn mortar shell. So think comedy bomb, bomb with a fuse that burns, do spang. And this was found. And it was amazing, still intact. And we had to get the guys, explosive experts up from south of England, to come and look at it. And they drilled out the core and they emptied it out. And when they were emptying it out, it started to heat up, and it was an exothermic reaction with the air. So part of it wouldn't have gone bang, but it fizzled gently and got very hot. So not a good thing to have in a museum anywhere. So we had to make sure it was completely cleaned out and all that sort of thing. But great discovery. I mean, and the thing is, we know roughly where it was fired from. We know exactly where it's landed. But still, I still want what I really want to find uncorked is a bottle of whiskey. That would be much better. We do have in the trust collection, we have a couple of bottles in Canna House from the SS Politician. From the Whisky Galore fame. Compton Mackenzie was a big pal of Margaret Fay Shaw and John Lorne Campbell at Canna House, so he left his typewriter there, and also a couple of bottles from the writing of the Whisky Galore book. So great story. So I need to go and check those out sometime.
That's cool. It's the National Trust for Scotland. Is it? Am I right in thinking it's the third largest landowner?
Yes, I think we're after the government and the Duke of Buccleuch, I think. We've got about 380,000 members. So if you're a member of the National Trust for Scotland, we look after it on behalf of the nation anyway. So it's 76,000 acres of ground. It's about 1% of Scotland's landmass, I think. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's
are you only allowed therefore to dig on your own ground?
Yeah, generally. The one exception to that is we did the Glenlivet because I had connections to it, but also because they were funded the whole project. So it was a great partnership to do both, to do a big scale, farm scale sized distillery, and look at all the bothy scale stuff. So very good.
That's good. And you just wonder how much more is out there that's not NTS, that you can get your hands on.
There have been surveys done in Strathconnan by amateur archaeologists going, just walking hills, and where there was like 50 individual illicit whiskey bothies discovered, just on surface remains alone, So we know there are definite concentrations in part of the country, but they will be everywhere, and there'll be ones in the southern uplands and in the borders and things as well, So I'm sure, whether it was whiskey they were making or some other illicit alcohol, it's debatable, but yeah.
I'll just pour my second dram, which is Glenallachie. Every dram has been thoughtfully chosen tonight. This one has been chosen because, one, I needed to finish the bottle before.
We've still got a wee bit in there.
Still got a wee bit. But the other one is, if you go to the visitor centre at not the visitor centre now, but upstairs from the shop on the way to Billy's kind of office, or the greeting office, there's a replica of an old coil that they found, I think, on site of. And it's that blue, you spoke about that blue kind of sulfuric copper.
Yeah.
And that's on, I think it's the coil from the still. It's on the wall. So it's kind of an homage to, Glenallachie is a relatively new distillery in 1967, I think. 66, 67, that kind of time. So, relatively new, but obviously during the build, they discovered that there was whiskey there beforehand. So that's why that is in my glass.
I bet there will be, I bet even the folk that listen to this they'll know of somebody who has a bit of a copper worm or a still or the head of a still or something like that, or something sitting in an attic or in a farm somewhere. There's probably a lot of them out there that are unrecorded. So yeah, if anybody's got anything like that, then let us know. Yeah, the trust has got a couple of small stills that are probably illicit stills from the Angus glens that are now on display in the House of Dun. What used to be the remains of the Angus Folk Museum collection is on display in the cafe at the House of Dun now. So if you go there, you can go and have a cup of coffee and go and see the remains of the illicit whiskey stills that are in the collection there, but they're around the country. There's quite a few of them out there, and every time I go past a pub, some of them are probably, a lot of them are new or relatively new, but yeah, it'd be good to have a list of where all the old ones are.
Yeah, there's always a good excuse to go in to the pub as well.
Yeah, just to check it out, obviously.
Kat, I think you were going to say something before I talked Glenallachie.
We had we had well, it was two things actually. One's a question I want to get back to because it was a really good question and it was back a while ago. Probably where my internet connection, like half an hour ago. The other one is, firstly, we had Alistair Heather on. Remember, Mike? He now has a podcast and he does quite a bit for BBC Scotland, but he wrote his dissertation on illicit distilling in Angus. He's from Dundee, so if you don't know him, he's maybe one to.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I think his Instagram handle is
really clever guy, but he and he does a podcast for is it the Scots magazine or something? Does a podcast for now as well about sort of the history of Scotland and stuff. But yeah, his speciality is illicit distilling, so maybe one.
Yes, I think I have.
To watch out for. Yeah.
You've.
But the other thing was, Phil Fraser wrote your question. Okay, I'll ask my question, then you can say your thing enough while my internet catches up. But Phil wanted to know, what one would out of all the illicit whiskey places, what one would you most want to try a dram from and why? And he's saying it's such an interesting episode tonight, and it's definitely from the level of chat I can see on the side of the screen, everyone's really into this tonight. So, which one would you want to try, Derek?
Yeah, well, I suppose whiskey's probably like the places themselves all vary. I liked Ben Lomond just because of the amount of things that we found, and obviously the views from it were amazing. Ben Lawers is quite good, but probably I think Torridon. Given that there's not many whiskies in that part of the world anymore. Obviously, Skye is probably the closest to it. So I think a laggy do from the one that the excise officers raided that I read out earlier on. Maybe a wee shot, a dram from one of that would be quite a nice one to have a go at. I wonder if it would have sea breezes on it and things like that, but influence of the sea and peaty hills, and yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah. Torridon, and every time I go to Torridon, it's always
That
sunny.
sounds good.
So maybe that'll be the right one to have.
Sounds.
Did you meet the stag that comes over to say hello to you in the car park?
I don't think I think he passed away a couple of years ago. There was too many too many visitors feeding him sweeties. Yeah, he wasn't doing very well.
Oh, that's a shame. He would have got to a fair age as well. I think he was pretty famous, wasn't he?
I think he was quite famous. I've forgotten what his name was. He did have a name.
I can't remember either. Yeah, I've got a picture of him somewhere.
Yeah,
it's cool. I love Torridon. Such a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's fantastic.
Good band too. Dave Sturck is studying a master's in history. Rick, a master's in history. Rick, he's answering Rick's question. And his dissertation, not a master's in history of Rick. Sorry. I think Kat's laughing far too much at that. Grammar, Rick. Sorry, David. You should be doing a master in the English language. And Friday says that there were the remains of an old distillery in Huntly over the Bogie, until relatively recently. But I think the remains may have been built over or removed now. That must be frustrating for you guys as well, discovering maybe something that was or potentially there, but it's been built over or,
Yeah, especially the later distilleries, especially the licensed, the big ones. It's amazing how few of those, because the issue with distilleries is they're like mills. A good site for a distillery is always a good site for the distillery. So generally what happens is they get bigger, they wipe out the traces of the earlier. A lot of them will say that they're early, but in fact they've rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt, and now there's nothing left. So the good thing about the Glenlivet was, because they moved down the hill, this bit was left largely untouched. I mean, obviously demolished the buildings, but there are one or two of them out there still, obviously, that is, if you look at the map evidence that go back a fair way. So, looking at ordnance survey maps is quite a good way to see how things have changed over time. If you look at the National Map Library of Scotland, and you can do that in different layers of maps on top of each other, it's really quite useful. So you can do that around distillery sites to get a very good idea. Somebody's written here, I think it was Rick, does Derek use radar or sonar or some technology to discover stuff before digging? We do on big sites, but not really in illicit whiskey bothies. Generally, we know where they are because they've survived, and in terms of their upstanding remains, so we wouldn't see them. You could probably pick up some of the upstanding features on LiDAR, which is that aerial survey from an aircraft with a laser, basically a laser scanner. But tend not to use geophysics or anything like that for this sort of period of stuff. It's great where it's all been ploughed flat, but most of the stuff that you're looking at in whiskey landscapes are still upstanding. So you literally fall over them. So you know they're there, and you don't need the high tech to go beep to tell you. Yeah. So that's quite useful.
I think, by nature, hidden and hard to find, and in places you don't necessarily go to look. Which makes them important. If they were easy to find, then you'd have no trace of them because they'd been packed up a long time ago. I'm just looking back at the comments. There was one I was going to come back to. I think. Sorry, just having a look. Have you got your window open again, Kat? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't even know if actually you're just taking a while to read comments, whether I'm still on delay. No, I'm still on a delay.
Yeah, there's definitely still a delay. So the Pioneering Spirit project is that going to be an ongoing thing, or is that kind of a finite?
Yeah, we're sort of winding it up now. We've got one. I've got one more. I've been trying to do it for a while. I've got one more illicit whiskey site, bothy, that I want to do an excavation of as part of the project, which is on the island of Lunga, out in Treshnish. So if you think Iona, go north of Iona into the middle of the sea there, and it's on a small island, Lunga, which is uninhabited now, but there's a little barn, kiln barn, quite close to it, and it's just.
I'm sure Kat used to live there, to be honest.
Aye. Well, there's two different Lungas, so yeah, it depends. It'll be the one, yeah. But yeah, that'll be it.
Yeah, so I actually used to live on an island next to Lunga.
Oh, which one?
But the other one, not the outer one, the inner one. I used to live on Ling, which is next to
Ling,
Lunga, which is next to Scarborough and Shuna. You're talking about the outer one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a running joke in the Blether that anywhere that's mentioned, Kat used to live there.
Yeah, it certainly does.
Yeah. So this last project you think is pretty exciting, is it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it'll be good. We haven't done many island ones yet, so they have to be there. So it'll be good. It'd be good to check it out. Although there was a garrison up until just after the 45 on Cairnabug Moor, Cairnabug Beg at the north end of the Treshnish. So, you'd had to be pretty canny to be distilling within, unless you're just supplying the garrison. Maybe that's the way it works. So yeah, interesting. It could be good. Anyway, it'll sort of finish it off just nicely, I think. And then we'll write the book and get it all out there. And yeah, I mean, it's a great. And then like all archaeological things, there's a bit of time afterwards to ruminate over what we found, and you let it settle in, and then 10 years down the line, we go back to it and revisit it and go and do some other sites. So that might be the way it works.
History it's such a fascinating project or subject as well, that it's something that I like to call it the evolution of facts. It's like one day we think this is what happened and how it's done, and then tomorrow you might find something that completely flips that on its head, and it's just like, I mean,
our whole thing about this project was trying to get away from the romanticization of it. There's a lot of historical stuff written down, but a lot of it is repeated again and again across Scotland, and sort of traditional tales. So we wanted to find places where there was still material remains of the process of making whiskey in the hills, and that's a nice contrast, especially for the, as I say, a lot of these places, nobody wrote the history down. We will know it will never appear in a document. So archaeology,
or if it was written down, it was written in song or verse, or very biased to that individual or that community, wasn't it?
But then you get all these different sources, and when you bring them all together, it makes a really round picture. It's great. It's a nice way to do it.
Rick is so Rick's over in San Francisco, and he's saying they can talk to astronauts in space with less of a delay than talking with Kat in a Blether. Well, he gets sponsored by NASA.
True.
Somebody's asking where the distillery or the still on Lunga was, because they went they visited the buildings. Ed Friday says. Basically, it's beyond the buildings on the east coast, looking back towards Mull. So on the sheltered side of the island, effectively. So yeah, you were not far away from it when you were at the buildings on Lunga.
Interesting. Well, what's the oldest thing you found in a dig?
Heavens. Well, Mesolithic stuff. So hunter-gatherers. Yeah, cat's internet, indeed. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Mesolithic hunter-gatherers remains, so little bits of flint from guys that were chasing deer over the hills when 8,000 BC sort of thing. Yeah. So you get everything in Scotland. It's great.
We're quite lucky that we've got so much history as a as a people. There's been people here for this long. I think I'm doing a bit of research for a podcast. I'm not quite launching yet, but it's about whiskey in general, but we go beyond that. And is it rum? The Isle of Rum has found kind of traces of mead or honey-based spirit 3,000 years old.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these Bronze Age pots, if you get them analysed, they come out being alcoholic fermented, drinks of some form. Some of them will be mead, some of them will be milk-based, some of them will be, pretty awful by the time, I would imagine. But you know what? Whatever got you through the day.
Yeah. It's incredible. What I like about that, and this is kind of the subject of the podcast, is that community spirit. We were making drink for a reason back then.
Yeah.
Probably religious or ceremonial or something.
Yeah.
But is that the kind of things that... Sorry. That's not my internet going as well, is it?
No. I don't know.
No.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, is that, I was going to say, is that, because obviously we're whiskey oriented tonight, but we've kind of dipped in elsewhere. Is it like, what I'm trying to say, what fascinates you about the history? Is it the evolution of community? Is it how we evolved as people, or is it more, look how they used to do things, and what is it they call the bug for you?
You know what? It's a wee bit of everything. It's it's a bit of. I like understanding about places. Places I've been, places to go. I like finding out. That there's more depth to a place than you initially think. And of course, much of the Highlands, there used to be a lot more people living there. So I like finding out about things like that. I like the broader sort of human development experience side of things as well. That can be more difficult to prove in an archaeological context a lot of the time. And you know what? I just like finding old things. And telling stories. Stories is what it's all about. I mean, archaeology is just a way to tell stories about the past, but using a different medium, really. Instead of writing, it's using objects. So our stories in some ways are channeled into certain types of stories a lot of the time, but it's great. It's a great way to do it, So, and when you can start pulling in lots of different strands of evidence and different experts, it's an exciting pastime and an even more exciting occupation. It's when you get paid to do it for a living. Fantastic.
And you talked about 1994 when you first did the survey of Glenlivet.
Aye.
Were you a whiskey fan as a drink before that, or was it this discovery of these?
You know what? I wasn't a big fan of whiskey back in 1994. So yeah, I'd have been in my 20s. Like many of us, probably whiskey comes to you later in life sometimes. you sort of slow down and you
I was
enjoy
hoping
it.
I was hoping when I asked that question, you're like, well, I'm actually only 25 now.
Yeah. But I think what it did was it made me interested in the process of whiskey making, because I had to write a report, and actually the report was rubbish, but it got me interested in how do you do it, and it's taken me years to get it into my head. And at least I now think I've got a pretty good understanding of it. But without doing all the digging and the reading and the research and the going around and listening to Alan Winchester tell me how it's done, I would never have got it. So it's a good way to learn things. And that was definitely the push at the door that let me into the whiskey world, was that initial survey that I did back in '94. And then I was working for a commercial archaeology company. So I was doing it for, we're normally doing things in advance of forestry plantations and building roads and things like that. So it's quite an unusual job to go and look at an old whiskey distillery site. And that really, it was it's like a nice full circle. I feel like, yes, I'm complete now. 30 years later.
It was always archaeological kind of studies and stuff was your kind of
background. No, I did archaeology. I started archaeology. My first dig was in 1986. So that's 40 years ago this year. I don't know how it came to that. So I've been doing archaeology now for 40 years. So it sounds dreadfully ancient. But the good thing about being an archaeologist is, the older you become your subject. So, I'm starting to become archaeology myself, which is great.
Have you ever, you must have had that situation where...
I'm becoming less interested. No, that's the trouble.
You must have had that kind of discovery where you think, oh my God, this is going to be great. I had to analyze and you realize it's something from just down the road a few years back. And
you get a pretty good idea straight away. I've been doing it long enough now that generally I've got a good idea. It's more the other way around. It's the things that you think were rubbish that end up turning out to be exciting, rather than the things that you thought were exciting and turn out to be rubbish. There's more of the latter and less of the former, which is probably a good way. I think that it should be.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if more distilleries took Glenlivet's lead here and said to the National Trust or guys like yourself, come and have a look at our site. We own X amount of ground. We believe we've got the archives of the ground.
Well,
come on board and have a look.
I think definitely archives are a huge part of it, and you guys will be aware of that from the the whiskey world. That Glenlivet does have a professional archivist that works with them, Robert, who's fantastic, Robert Athol. So he knows his stuff and he knows about archives, and the importance of archives, especially for the early years, is really key. And probably we've lost a fair amount over the years. So archives are important, and also as repositories for material culture as well, because they've got warehouses full of old bits of kit that have been cleared out of numerous distilleries, and knowing where these came from and what they did is, things move on and change quite dramatically. The technology, people adopt it very, very quickly. So old bits of kit are quite quickly lost or recycled into something else. And then that's probably what happened at this site here, the original Glenlivet site. They probably took the milling machine and the stills and things. They just took them wholesale down the hill and put them into the new place, and that's why they've demolished it down to the fireplaces. So that's a fireplace here underneath one of the stills. People have always been recycling things. Having an understanding of the archives and then the buildings themselves. There's probably, what is it? Barnard's book of the old distilleries book from the 19th century is fantastic. Yeah. Going back and looking at that compared to what is on the ground now, even then is, and that was in the 1880s, 1890s, wasn't it? The change is is remarkable. So many of these original sites have gone, and some of the ruins are under threat. What's the big one down on the 4th? Kennet Pans, is it? You can see it from the new bridge over the Kincardine. At Kincardine, it's a big ruin right down on the on the 4th on the north side. Yeah, so there's ruinous buildings out there. Most of them have been studied in some shape or form.
Yeah. Anywhere that you would love to get your hands on, but can't?
There's a site near Killiecrankie that I would like to do as a bothy site because it appears in a painting, and I think I found it. So that's one I'd like to do at some point. Yeah, that would be a nice one to do, especially if it came up with trumps. Yeah.
Is that the painting of the illicit distillers?
It's a general view of Killiecrankie, and in the bottom corner there's a little vignette of something happening, and when you zoom in on it, you go, wait a minute, that's a little whiskey bothy, and you can just see the ghost of a figure in this little turf building against a slope, and you go, and you can see the view, you can know where it is, it's not a famous one. It's just a little, you just think, oh, somebody's put that in there for a reason, and I think it's because it was there.
Reason. Yeah.
So that would
be cool.
That would be a cool one. So I'll come back on and tell you when I found that one.
Please do. Please do. It's been so much fun tonight. And the guys at home, and you can see who the whiskey buffs are. Dave and Ed and Phil, Rick, all asking these great questions. One question we have, and this is forget archaeology, forget history. This is purely a whiskey question for you, Derek. Callum has asked, do you have a top whiskey for each of the 5 regions?
Oh heavens! I don't think I've thought about that well enough to know. But you know what? Next time I will have. Obviously, Glenlivet's right up there. And Speyside, Islands, Colilla, on Isla, Scotia and Campbelltown, would it be? Where else?
I mean, that's the only question. That's the only answer he wants.
Yeah. Where else? Yeah. Where am I missing? Lowlands.
The Lowlands. The Lowlands.
You know what? I've never tried Annan. I'd like to try Annan because there was a bit of archaeology work done there down on the Solway. It'd be interesting to see what that's like. I've never really had a go at it. I do like Arran actually. Arran's a nice. Does that count as Lowlands or does that count as Highlands?
It's Highlands, isn't it? It's classed.
Yeah. It's across the line. And then what am I missing? That would be it. 5.
Campbelltown, Lowland. Do you do Highland?
Highland, is that? Oh, it's not Glenlivet, is it? What would Highland be then?
Glenlivet, Speyside.
Yeah, better. Oh, don't know. That's to be explored.
You've got 2 right answers, both by Cat's Company. So you can have Ardmore or you can have Glengarry.
All right, there we go.
That's
yeah.
So I've got a wee Ardblair from the Ardmore distillery that Cat picked up for me as my final dram tonight.
Is Ardmore the one
Little Brown Dog?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh well, I should say that one then definitely because it's right beside the trust property. It's probably our closest distillery to a trust property.
All right, well, there you go.
Is that because the old home farm?
Keep
you
going,
go, Kat.
Oh, yeah, because the old home farm, the fields kind of go right down to the railway line, which is at the back of the distillery. You see the old kind of stable block, which is it's a private farm now, but it would have been the home farm for Leith Hall. So yeah, it's like literally just down the road. You could see the distillery from like the chimneys from Leith Hall. It's really, really close. It's cool. You don't even need binoculars.
Is Leith Hall the one that was owned by the Spanish royal family? Or am I talking nonsense?
So.
That's Ward House. Ward House.
Other
side
it's on
of
that
the
road,
distillery.
isn't it? It's further, yeah.
Mm.
It maybe still is.
Yeah. It's for sale now. I think it's for sale. I'm sure if you give it a Google, I think it is up for sale now, Ward House. But Ward House was linked to, this is me forgetting my script for Ardmore. It was linked to the guy that wrote Horatio Hornblower, that stories. I'm sure he owned Ward House for a while, something like that anyway. The author, or he was a naval officer or something. I don't know. I need to reread my Ardmore script. That's really bad. I wrote the book. But yeah, it's cool distillery. And Leith Hall's beautiful. I love Leith Hall. The gardens are gorgeous. It's so nice. It's amazing you just wander around there. Yeah. All the volunteers do such a great job keeping it going throughout the year. Very cool.
You've caught up pretty quick now, Kat. We're cooking with gas now.
Well, I know, it's always like, just as we're about to say goodbye, I'm like, oh, wait, my internet works. Hooray. That's only taken the whole night. Bloody internet.
Ian is asking, I wonder if there's much interaction between the National Trust of Scotland and the archivists that work for the bigger whisky companies.
Well, probably, only when our projects overlap. We've got archivists that work in the National Trust for Scotland looking after our archive, our corporate archive, and our archive that relate to our properties. And I would imagine the whisky companies, basically, they've got corporate archivists that look after most of the big ones will have. They'll know each other because the archivist world is even smaller than the archaeological world and a lot smaller than the whisky world, I would imagine. So being a whisky archivist is very, very small. So Robert Athol at Glenlivet will know them. Well, he works for Chivas for Pernod Ricard, so he covers all their stuff. But we probably don't. We probably don't work that closely with them unless there's a project like this that where our interests meet. Quite like Ed Friday's favourite Highland malt is Glenfarclas. Favourite Speyside is Glenfarclas.
I do like our Glenfarclas, I've got to admit. Obviously, on the Glenfarclas, they still class themselves as Highland. A couple do, like Balwinnie and Macallan. There's one more that's escaping me. It's not Tomatin, but so because Speyside's relatively new locality in terms of whiskey, some guys think they're probably their spirit character is more akin to what we regard as a classic Highland over the Speyside style or the Glenlivet style, I suppose, is where I think Glenlivet style of whiskey had a big influence on what we now regard as Speyside.
Yeah.
We've got Kay McKenzie's asking
one of the guys
question.
is asking if you need any volunteers for.
Well,
same question.
Yeah, a lot of our projects are volunteers. I like the fact that it would be on Isla. Unfortunately, not because of we don't have any. Trust doesn't have any properties on Isla. We'd love some, but if anybody wants to give us a distillery on Isla, that'd be great. But yes, and obviously Glenlivet during the Spirit of Speyside Festival. We actually did some excavations up there during the festival for a couple of years, and it worked quite well. And yeah, most of our work is with volunteers because, yeah, as you can see, I didn't shift all the soil in the background there on my own. So it can be quite, can be like a lot of work. We're digging in a couple of weeks' time at House of Dun in Angus, not on a whisky site, just on an old castle site. It's my colleague Daniel Rhodes is doing that. So yeah, there's always volunteers. There's always places to be dug. So yeah, if you're interested in archaeology, just go online and look for Scottish Archaeological Digs or Archaeology Scotland, and there'll be a list of current things coming up.
That's cool.
That would be cool.
You might end up with us all turning up. We Blether archaeology dig.
Yeah.
And you have to have a hat, a whip, and a satchel. That's kind of the
and a loathing of snakes.
And an orchestra in the background.
Yeah. Well, whenever I go, that's always the case. Yeah, I can hear it in my head all the time.
I was reading an article. I can't remember which one it was, but they described you as pretty much Indiana Jones.
Yes, yeah. That's our media guys, our press guys. Yeah, they coined that a few years ago, and unfortunately, it's stuck. So it's not the best thing. I'm a bit like Harrison Ford in that I'm getting slightly over the hill now.
And you're like a Glenmorangie.
Yeah. When I saw him promoting that, we were going to put out a social media post that said the real archaeologists are working at Glenlivet, but thought we'd better not.
Oh, you should have.
Yeah.
The lawyers will be on the phone.
Brilliant. Derek, it's been such a good night.
It has been awesome.
No, that's
amazing.
been great.
You said
Thank
yes
you
and
for...
came on this chat despite our dial-up internet connection and lack of editing.
That'll be good. I should go and get another whiskey to celebrate.
Another hour, yeah. If you're ever in the area, give us a shout, and it'd be great to share a dram in person.
Yeah, and if we're doing any other on-site things, I'll let you know. And if you wanted to come along and visit while we were digging, yeah. That'd be good. Although it's not anticipated yet. I've got to sit down and write it all up now. That's the hard part.
If you don't have somebody to do that, you're the head of the department. Can you not just?
Yeah, I know. I want to do
it. I can imagine having. Sorry, we're going off on another tangent. You've got all this information, writing it out must be a little bit like putting all the pieces of a puzzle together. Do you get these kind of, hold on a second, let's go back now, because an idea comes in your head. As you're writing out, you think, holy shit, that totally makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, it was the crossover stuff, things like the recognizing what the fire grate bars were and the patch for the patch for the barrel and all these things. You start to see them on the small sites, you see them on the big site. So there is a material culture of whiskey making that you can start to identify. And just the little things that are useful, and you only find that once you start doing enough of these sites. So if you to dig one, you would find you'd be lucky if you found something, but once you look at a number, you get pottery at one, you get glass at another, you get structural remains, a lot of drains and fireplaces at others. And so the story builds up in terms of the material remains. So you do get moments like that, when you're sitting back with it all on your desk and you think, oh, that's what that is. So like that, the little slider from the padlock, that was great. So
there's a picture of it on that Pioneer and Spirit website.
Yeah,
which is quite cool. If I think Knockdhu Distillery has the full bifter, and it's something like this big.
Yeah,
it's massive. It's quite cool. They've got a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's some good ones. I think it was up for that one was up for auction when we found that thing on site, and unfortunately we didn't get it.
Oh, you did it? Yeah.
I think we did. But the Glenlivet's got similar ones, but not
Yeah.
exactly the same. So there will be, yeah. Again, these things change over time, So what was the good padlock in 1829 by the 1840s is no longer a good padlock, so you get new ones. Yeah.
Absolutely. Dave Starks asked, he said, brilliant Blether. Wholeheartedly agree. When are you getting Alan Winchester on?
Yeah,
we've had Alan on.
Yeah.
We had Alan on when the announcement of the Cabrach was coming on the go. We had Alan.
Well, I should get him back on now. It's up and running.
I know. We are in talks. We have spoken a couple of times with the Cabrach distillery to get it going, and obviously they're pretty flat out just now. But we know the distiller well. We know. Yes. We know quite a few of the team.
I mean, it's a cracking setup there. And in terms of scale order, is this sort? In terms of the size of the buildings, it's very similar to what you would have had at Glenlivet in the early years. Farm buildings converted into the distillery. I mean, because that's all this was. It wasn't a purpose-built distillery. It was converted farm courtyard, and then when they took it down the hill, they just made it. They made it more efficient, and they built the mill in. They got the whole program working. So yeah, it's great how you can see the evolution of whiskey making through the archaeology and the history.
I'm just waiting for Kat. I'm just going to say if she wants to come in.
No, it's all good. My internet is just it's a no-go. So I am just going to say thank you very much for joining us tonight, and come back please sometime when my internet works. That would be great. It'd be great to meet you in real life too.
Yeah, no, it'd be great. That'd be grand. Thank you very much for having me. I like nothing better than to chat about what we do. So that's what it's all about.
No, it's
Callum has summed it up. He says, "What a great Blether! One of the most
one of my favorite Blethers."
Yeah, it has. And sometimes we talk a lot of whiskey, and we talk a lot about the drams and what's in your glass and what you enjoy drinking, but sometimes we lose track of how that whiskey got in that glass.
Yeah.
It's not just a case of that distillery putting in the glass. Ed Friday, I think, commented a wee while ago about how far back this art goes and how far back the stories and the people and everything goes. And it's been fascinating to kind of, if only for a little bit, just under 2 hours, bring that to life and bring that story. And hopefully a couple of people at home are thinking, you know what, I'm going to find out more about that.
Yeah,
let's jump on that link and let's find out more about what the trusts are doing. If we can help you guys with that, then absolutely. Callum says, who knew archaeology could be so interesting?
Yes. Yes. Well, does Derek do other talks or podcasts? Yeah, yes, I do. There's the National Trust for Scotland runs a podcast series which is hosted by Jackie Bird, Jackie for the telly, and I've done about 4 or 5 on there with her. The very first National Trust for Scotland podcast was myself and Jackie talking about archaeology and the trust in lockdown. So yeah, there's lots on there to look into that.
That's so cool. I did not know that. Consider me subscribed. That's going to be interesting. I'm going to dive into that.
In fact, there is one about whiskey on there, and it was my colleague Daniel and Alan Winchester that did it. So worth a listen.
Brilliant. We will do that. Guys, in lieu of Kat's internet, I'm just going to say a massive thank you to you all for this half of the year. We are going to take a wee summer break from the Blether. We will announce when we're back in the next kind of couple of weeks. And have a great summer. Get some holidays in. Hopefully we don't see it coming home for those football fans among you. If it comes home, then I don't think I'm going to start the Blether again, especially with guys like David Stark and that who will be joining in. And yeah, anyway, we will have a great summer. If you're away on holiday, we can't wait to hear about it. And yeah, we will see you all again soon. Derek, thank you so much.
Cheers
For joining us. Kat, thank you for popping in now and then.
Cheers.
It's been fantastic. And we will see you all again very, very soon. Enjoy your break.
Thank you.
Slange.